Me, Clay, early 30s, engineer with a stable paycheck. Been married to Elsa going on 5 years. At first, everything felt settled in the best way. We'd end the workday in the same space, trade stories, throw together something to eat, let a movie play while the world slowed down. Nothing flashy, just the quiet routines that turned two people into a life. Then the tone changed, not all at once. Little remarks, subtle shifts. She started reshaping her online world. New follows, long opinion pieces, conversations I wasn't part of, and ideas I didn't recognize. Suddenly, everything was a problem. Everything was a symptom of a larger invisible sickness she called the patriarchy. I'd come home from a 10-hour day, exhausted, and she wouldn't ask how I was. Instead, she'd point out that me expecting her to have thought about dinner was a form of ingrained patriarchal expectation. I hadn't expected it, I just hoped. There's a difference. But to her, there wasn't. Our conversations turned into lectures. I'd tell a story about my boss, a tough but fair guy, and she'd deconstruct it. She'd explain that his management style was a manifestation of toxic masculinity. I'd try to explain that he was just a demanding manager, but she'd shake her head, giving me this pitying look. The look said, "You just don't get it because you're part of the problem." It was exhausting. It was like living with a prosecutor who had already decided I was guilty of a crime I didn't understand. I started talking less. It was easier to just nod and make non-committal sounds. My silence was also a problem, of course. It was weaponized incompetence or male stonewalling. There was always a term for it, always a neat little box to put my behavior in. I remember one evening distinctly. It was probably a few months before everything really kicked off. I brought her flowers on my way home from work. No reason, just saw them and thought she'd like them. She looked at them, then at me. No smile. She told me that flowers were a patriarchal tradition, a symbolic apology for the systemic oppression men inflict upon women. She asked what I was apologizing for. I just stood there, holding a bouquet of roses, feeling like an idiot. I told her I wasn't apologizing for anything. I just thought they were nice. She replied that the intention didn't matter as much as the impact, and the impact was reinforcing a harmful dynamic. She took them, but she didn't put them in a vase. She laid them on the kitchen counter, and they just sat there and wilted over the next few days. It felt like a metaphor for our marriage. I stopped trying after that. I just went to work, came home, ate what was there, and retreated to my computer or a book. We were roommates living in a museum of resentment, and she was the curator. The house was quiet, but it was a loud kind of quiet, full of unsaid things and her loud, judgmental thoughts. Her friends were just like her. When they came over, the house buzzed with academic jargon and cynical laughter. They'd talk about men as if we were a different, deeply flawed species. I'd just stay in my office, put on headphones, and try to ignore it. Then came the big night. She sat me down on the couch. Her face was serious, almost theatrical. My heart sank. I thought she was going to ask for a divorce. Honestly, a part of me felt a flicker of relief at the thought. But it wasn't that. It was something far stranger. She told me she had been doing a lot of thinking about our relationship, about its structure, its limitations. She said that monogamy was a construct designed to control women, to turn them into property. She felt suffocated, not by me specifically, she was quick to add, but by the institution itself. I just listened. I'd learned that interrupting was pointless. She explained that for her to truly grow as an individual, to find her authentic self, she needed freedom. She needed to be able to explore connections with other people without the shame and restrictions of traditional marriage. She proposed an open marriage. My first reaction was a cold, sinking feeling in my stomach. It felt like the ultimate rejection. You're not enough, and the very concept of being with just you is a cage. But then I looked at her face. She was so sure of herself, so smug. She had this little smile on her face, like she was a revolutionary leader liberating an oppressed nation of one. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. She didn't think for a second that I would participate. In her worldview, I was the boring, traditional husband, the background character, the guy who goes to work, pays half the bills, and is too clueless to understand the enlightened world she lived in. This open marriage was for her and for her alone. It was a license for her to do whatever she wanted, while I was expected to just sit at home, holding down the fort. She even said something like, "And this will be good for you too. It will give you space to work on yourself, to question your own ingrained ideas about relationships." It was the most condescending thing I had ever heard. All the frustration, all the silent dinners, all the wilted flowers, it all coalesced into a single moment of clarity. I looked her right in the eye, and the exhaustion must have been plain on my face. A part of me wanted to argue, to scream about how unfair it all was. But I knew it would be useless. It would just be more proof of my fragile masculinity. So I did the one thing she never expected. I took a deep breath, and I said, "Okay," just that one word. The look on her face was priceless. For a split second, her smug certainty vanished. It was replaced by pure, unfiltered shock. She had a whole speech prepared for my objections, a whole flowchart of arguments and counter-arguments. My simple agreement broke her script. She recovered quickly, though. The shock morphed back into that self-satisfied smile, maybe a little wider this time. She probably thought she'd finally broken me, that I had accepted my place in her new world order. She immediately launched into a discussion of rules. The rules were, of course, all about her. Rules about her safety, her emotional well-being, her privacy. I just nodded along to all of them. I had only one rule. I told her, "My only rule is that whatever rules apply to you, they apply to me just the same. Total equality." She smirked. "Of course, Clay. That's the whole point of this. Freedom and equality." She had no idea what she had just agreed to. That night, I didn't sleep much. I wasn't sad or angry. I just felt empty. It was like the last thread holding our marriage together had been cut, and it was cut by her own hand. The next day, the change was immediate. She was glowing. She was happy, light, humming to herself as she got ready. She spent half the morning on her phone, and I could hear her giggling. I knew she was already on dating apps, crafting a profile about her ethically non-monogamous journey of self-discovery. I went into my home office and closed the door. I didn't go on any apps. That wasn't my style. Instead, I opened up my phone's contacts. I scrolled way back to a time before I met Elsa. And I found a name, Sophia. Sophia and I had worked together at my first job out of college. We were just friends, good friends. We'd get lunch, talk about books, complain about our boss. There was always a little spark there, a quiet, unspoken chemistry, but the timing was never right. She got a new job in another city, I met Elsa, and we just lost touch. I'd thought about her from time to time over the years, one of those what-if people. My heart was beating a little faster as I stared at her name. I hesitated for a long time. This felt like a huge step. But then I thought about Elsa's smug smile and the wilted flowers on the counter. I typed out a message, kept it simple. "Hey Sophia, it's Clay. It's been a long time. I know this is out of the blue, but I was just thinking about the old days and wondering how you're doing." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. A few hours passed. I didn't get a reply and started to think it was a stupid idea. Maybe she had a new number or a husband, or just didn't want to talk to some ghost from her past. Then my phone buzzed. It was her. She remembered me, and she sounded happy to hear from me. She'd moved back to the area a year ago. She was single. We texted back and forth for a bit, the conversation easy and natural. It was like no time had passed at all. She asked if I wanted to grab a coffee sometime, just to catch up. I told her I'd love that. Meanwhile, Elsa's journey wasn't going as smoothly as she'd imagined. She went on her first date that weekend. She got all dressed up, spent hours getting ready. She came back late, and she was in a sour mood. I didn't ask, but she told me anyway. The guy apparently had no interest in her inner world. He spent the whole time looking at his phone and making jokes she found unintelligent. She complained that the dating pool was a shallow, misogynistic swamp. It was a taste of the reality that men like me lived with all the time, but she couldn't see the irony. In her mind, the problem wasn't her expectations. It was that the world was failing to meet them. A few days later, I met Sophia for coffee. I was nervous, I admit, but the moment I saw her, the nervousness just melted away. She had the same warm smile I remembered. We sat and talked for 2 hours. It was the first real conversation I'd had in years. She asked me about my life, my job, my hobbies. And when I spoke, she actually listened. She didn't interrupt, She didn't analyze, she didn't judge, she just listened. I found myself opening up, talking about things I hadn't talked about in forever. I told her about my passion for woodworking, a hobby I'd let slide because Elsa considered it performatively rustic. Sophia thought it was cool. She asked to see pictures of things I'd made. I was careful not to talk about my marriage. It didn't feel right. I just said that things at home were complicated. She didn't press. She just nodded with understanding. When we parted ways, I felt lighter than I had in years. I went home, and Elsa was on the couch, swiping furiously on her phone. She looked up as I came in. "Where were you?" she asked, a slight edge to her voice. "Just catching up with an old friend," I said, keeping it neutral. She narrowed her eyes. "Oh? Which friend?" "Just someone I used to work with." She didn't like that answer, I could tell. But she couldn't say anything, not without sounding like a hypocrite. So she just said, and went back to her phone. The dynamic in the house started to change after that. Elsa went on a few more dates. None of them went well. One guy ghosted her after one meeting. Another told her she was too intense. Her feminist theory couldn't explain why her brilliant, liberated self wasn't being appreciated on the open market. Her frustration grew, and she started taking it out on me again. Little digs, passive-aggressive comments. But something was different now. They didn't bother me as much. It was like her words were bouncing off some new kind of shield I had. That shield was the memory of a simple, pleasant 2-hour conversation over coffee. It was the knowledge that I wasn't the crazy one. I wasn't the problem. I started seeing Sophia regularly. We'd meet for coffee, then it became lunch. We went for a walk in a park one weekend. We talked about everything and nothing. It was easy. It was fun. I was rediscovering the person I used to be before I got buried under years of criticism. And I started to change. I signed up for a gym membership and started going in the mornings before work. I bought some new clothes that actually fit well. I started spending more time in my workshop in the garage, the smell of sawdust filling the air. I was taking care of myself again, and it felt good. Elsa noticed every single change, and she hated it. My happiness was an anomaly in her carefully constructed narrative. I was supposed to be the sad, abandoned husband, pining away while she explored her freedom. My quiet contentment was a direct challenge to her worldview. One evening, I came home from the gym feeling great. She was waiting for me in the kitchen. She said, "You're spending a lot of time with this friend of yours." The way she said friend was dripping with sarcasm. I just shrugged. "Yeah, it's been nice." "Is it a woman?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Yes." A flash of something ugly crossed her face. Jealousy? Rage? "You know, when I suggested this, I thought we'd be open and honest with each other," she said. This was rich coming from her. "I am being honest," I replied calmly. "You asked a question, and I answered it." She wanted details. She wanted a name. She wanted to know what we did, what we talked about. She wanted ammunition. I refused to give it to her. I told her that my relationships were my own, just as hers were her own. I was just following the rules she set. I reminded her of her own words about privacy and individual journeys. She couldn't argue with her own logic, and it was driving her insane. She stormed out of the room. A few weeks went by like this. A cold war in our own home. I was living a double life. At home, I was quiet and distant, walking on eggshells around Elsa's moods. But when I was with Sophia, I was alive. I finally told Sophia about my situation. I had to. It was becoming serious, and she deserved to know the truth. I explained the whole thing, the lectures, the open marriage proposal, everything. I expected her to be shocked, or maybe even to end things, but she just listened patiently. When I was done, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That sounds incredibly lonely. I'm so sorry you went through that." No judgment, just empathy. It almost brought me to tears. She said she understood if it was too complicated and I needed to figure things out. But she also said she really liked spending time with me and she was willing to see where things went, as long as I was honest with her. Her decency was like a drink of water in the desert. It made me realize what I had been missing, what a real partnership could feel like. Things were getting better for me, and worse for Elsa. Her search for authentic connection was yielding nothing but a series of frustrating disappointments. She was discovering that the men she wanted, the exciting alpha types she secretly craved, weren't interested in her personality or her politics. And the men who were interested, the ones who agreed with her politics, she found boring and weak. Her perfect ideology was colliding with messy human reality, and reality was winning. The tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. I was getting ready to leave one Saturday morning. I had plans with Sophia. We were going to drive up to a scenic spot for a hike. I was packing a small bag with water and snacks. Elsa came and stood in the doorway of the bedroom, watching me. Her arms were crossed. Going somewhere? Yeah, just for the day. Going for a hike. With her? Yes. Her face tightened. It's becoming quite a regular thing, isn't it? This friendship. I didn't rise to the bait. Yes, it is. I could see the storm gathering in her eyes. She wanted a fight. She was desperate for one. She wanted me to yell, to get angry, to give her something she could label as toxic male rage. That way, she could be the victim again. She could be in the right. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. I just zipped up my bag, smiled politely, and said, I probably won't be back until late. Don't wait up. I walked past her and out the door. I knew this was a tipping point. I knew something was about to break. I just didn't realize how spectacular the implosion was going to be. The drive out of the city with Sophia was quiet in a comfortable way. Not the tense, angry quiet I was used to with Elsa, but a peaceful silence. We listened to music, pointed out interesting things on the side of the road. The further we got from my house, the lighter my shoulders felt. The hike itself was incredible. It was a perfect day, cool and sunny. We walked for hours, talking the whole time. She told me about her job, her family, a ridiculously funny story about her cat. I found myself telling her about my own family, my childhood, things I hadn't discussed with Elsa in years because they weren't relevant to her political worldview. With Sophia, they were just parts of me, parts of my story. There was a moment we were climbing a steep, rocky section of the trail. I reached the top of a ledge and turned to give her a hand up. She took it without hesitation, and for a second, as I helped her up, our eyes met. There was this spark, this jolt of connection that had nothing to do with words. It was just pure, simple human connection, gratitude, trust, affection, all in one look. In that moment, I knew this was more than just a friendship. I knew it was real. We got to the summit, and the view was breathtaking. We sat on a large rock, eating the sandwiches we'd packed, and just looking out over the valley. She pulled out her phone and said, "This is too beautiful not to remember. Do you mind?" I told her I didn't. She put her arm around my shoulder, leaned in, and snapped a quick picture of us smiling with the huge valley spread out behind us. It was an innocent, happy photo, the kind friends take, the kind tourists take. She posted it to her social media a few minutes later with a simple caption, "Couldn't have asked for a better hiking day." She didn't tag me. She wasn't trying to make a statement. It was just a picture, a single, happy picture. But I had a feeling that this single picture was going to be a lit match tossed into a room full of gasoline. We stayed up there for a while longer, then started the long hike back down. When we got back to the car, I checked my phone for the first time in hours. It had exploded, dozens of notifications, 6 missed calls from Elsa, a wall of text messages. I scrolled to the top and started reading. The first few messages were simple. "Where are you? Hope your hike is going well." Passive-aggressive, but manageable. Then there was a gap of about an hour. The messages after that gap were completely different. They were frantic, furious. "Who is Sophia?" "A friend of a friend just sent me a picture of you with some woman all over you. You're on a date. You lied to me. You said it was a hike. I can't believe you would be so dishonest. This is not what we agreed to." Then the accusations started. "You've been having an affair this whole time, haven't you? This open marriage was just an excuse for you." I feel so betrayed. After I was vulnerable enough to share my needs with you, you do this. Call me, now. The hypocrisy was stunning. It was so pure, so potent, it was almost impressive. She was the one who blew up our marriage for the sake of freedom. She was the one who had been on half a dozen dates with strangers from the internet. But I have a pleasant day with an old friend, a friend who treats me with basic human decency, and suddenly I'm the villain. I'm the cheater. Sophia saw the look on my face. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. I took a breath. Not really. It seems the terms of my complicated situation at home have suddenly changed. I didn't show her the texts. It wasn't her drama to deal with. The drive home was much quieter than the drive out. I was mentally preparing myself for the storm that was waiting for me. I dropped Sophia off at her place. She put her hand on my arm before I left. Whatever it is, Clay, you don't deserve to be treated badly. Just remember that. Her kindness just twisted the knife of what I was heading home to. I pulled up to my house, and all the lights were on. It looked like it was on high alert. I walked in, and she was sitting on the living room couch in the dark. The only light was the glow from her phone screen. She didn't say hello, she just said, "I think you have some explaining to do." Her voice was cold, shaking with rage. I turned on the light. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying, or at least preparing to look like she'd been crying. I put my keys on the table. I wasn't going to play this game on her terms. I said, "There's nothing to explain, Elsa. I went for a hike with a friend, just like I said I would." She shot up from the couch. "A friend? A friend?" I saw the picture. "You were cozy. You were intimate. You were on a romantic getaway while I was here, worried about our marriage." The sheer audacity of that statement almost made me laugh. "Worried about our marriage?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Is that what you were doing when you were on your dates, worrying?" "That was different," she shrieked. "That was about my self-exploration. It was honest. It wasn't a secret, sordid affair." "There was nothing secret or sordid about it," I replied, keeping my voice even. "I told you I was going. You asked if it was with a woman. I said yes. How is that a secret?" I was a wall of calm, and it was making her even angrier. She needed me to yell, and I refused. She started pacing back and forth, waving her phone around like a weapon. "This isn't what open marriage is supposed to be," she said. "It's supposed to be about casual connections, about freedom, not about you replacing me." And there it was. The truth, finally. It was never about freedom. It was never about equality. It was about her having a safety net. It was about her being able to go out and play, secure in the knowledge that her boring, reliable husband was waiting at home for her if or when it didn't work out. The arrangement was only acceptable as long as she was the only one truly benefiting. The moment I found something real, the moment I found a genuine connection that made me happy, the game was over. Because my happiness exposed the lies she had built for herself. It proved that the problem wasn't the institution of marriage. The problem was her. I let her rant for a few more minutes. She accused me of cruelty, of gaslighting, of being a textbook narcissist. She used every single buzzword she had ever read in an article. It was like her ideology was a shield, and she was desperately holding it up to deflect from the fact that her own actions had led directly to this moment. When she finally paused to take a breath, I spoke. "Elsa," I said, and my voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. "Let me see if I understand this. You came to me and said that our marriage was a patriarchal prison. You said you needed the freedom to connect with other people to feel whole. You set the terms, I agreed to them. My only condition was that the rules applied equally to both of us. You went on dates, you sought out these connections. I never said a word. I respected your journey, just as you asked me to. Now I have reconnected with an old friend, a kind, decent person who makes me feel respected and happy. Something I haven't felt in this house for a very, very long time. And you're calling me a traitor. You're accusing me of destroying our marriage. The marriage that you yourself described as a cage just a few weeks ago. Do you hear it?" I asked her, my voice still quiet. "Do you hear the hypocrisy?" She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. She had no answer. I had used her own logic, her own enlightened words, and built a cage of reason around her, and she was trapped inside it. All the anger drained out of her face. It was replaced by something else. Panic. Pure, unadulterated panic. The look in her eyes was that of a gambler who had just pushed all her chips into the center of the table and realized she'd misread her hand completely. Her voice was different now. The rage was gone, replaced by a desperate, pleading tone. "Okay, you're right," she said, her voice trembling. "You're right. I was a hypocrite. I was scared. I didn't think you'd actually find someone." It was a stunning admission. "So this whole experiment was only okay as long as I was miserable?" I asked. "No, that's not it. I made a mistake," she said, taking a step toward me. "This was a mistake. Let's close it. Let's close the marriage. right now. We can go back to how things were. She was looking at me with these wide, pleading eyes, as if we could just rewind the tape, as if I could just erase the feeling of being heard and respected by Sophia, as if I could forget the feeling of that genuine smile, the easy laughter, the quiet understanding, as if I could willingly step back into the role of the silent, nodding husband, the emotional punching bag for her ever-shifting ideology. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger or resentment. I just felt a profound sense of pity. She had chased an idea of freedom so hard that she had destroyed the one real thing she had. "Elsa," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "we can't go back." "Why not?" she pleaded. "We can just stop. We'll tell them the experiment is over. I'll delete the apps. You can stop seeing her." The casual way she said that, stop seeing her, as if Sophia was just an object, a pawn in our game. That was the moment I knew it was well and truly over. "Because this wasn't an experiment for me, Elsa," I said. "This was a wake-up call. You didn't open my marriage. You ended it. You just didn't realize it until tonight. What I have with Sophia, it's not some casual thing I can just turn off. It's real. She respects me, and I can't and I won't disrespect her or what we have just because you're scared now." The tears started for real this time. Deep, ragged sobs of someone who has just realized they have lost everything, and it's their own fault. "So what are you saying?" she whispered through the tears. "I'm saying I'm going to pack a bag," I replied. "And I'm going to stay with a friend for a while. We need space. And I think we need to talk about a divorce." The word hung in the air between us. She completely broke down then, collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. A part of me, the old me, the husband me, felt a pang of instinct to go and comfort her, but I didn't. I just turned and walked into the bedroom and quietly started putting some clothes into a bag. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the most necessary. I left the house about 20 minutes later. She was still crying on the couch. I didn't look back. The next few months were a blur of lawyers and paperwork and awkward phone calls. Elsa tried everything. She tried apologizing. She tried begging. She tried blaming me again, telling our mutual friends that I had used her progressive ideas against her to orchestrate an affair. Some of them believed her friends mostly. They cut me off. My friends, the ones who had seen how miserable I had been for years, they supported me completely. One of them let me crash on his couch for the first couple of weeks. Through it all, Sophia was my rock. She never pressured me. She just listened. She was there for me. She gave me the space to process the end of my marriage and the support to get through it. We took things slow, but our connection just grew stronger. With her, there were no mind games, no lectures, no walking on eggshells. There was just honesty and laughter and a deep mutual respect. The divorce was finalized a while ago. Elsa stayed in the house. I didn't fight for it. I wanted a clean break. I moved into a new apartment, a place that was mine. The first thing I did was set up my woodworking tools in the spare room. The place smells like sawdust now. It smells like my own life. Sophia and I are still together. We're building something real, something steady. We cook dinner together. We go on hikes. We talk about our day. The simple stuff. The stuff that makes a life. The other night, we were just sitting on the couch watching a movie, and I looked over at her. She was just concentrating on the screen, but she looked so peaceful, so happy. And I felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude. I see Elsa's posts on social media sometimes. Her friends still prop her up. They post comments about her strength, her bravery, her resilience as a woman navigating a patriarchal world. Her posts are all about finding herself, about her journey, about healing from toxic relationships. She got what she wanted. She has all the freedom in the world. She's completely, utterly free. And from what I can tell, she's never been more alone.